down and listen to records. Smell the cover, read all the verses. Tell me about your favorites on vinyl and vision.
Hey folks, thanks for tuning into the latest episode of Vinyl and Vision. Here we are with episode 139. Today's very special guest is Nick Sadler. Nick is an incredibly talented musician, guitarist. He's played in a number of bands, most notably Daughters, Fang Island, Way Out, Mythless, and probably a few more that I am overlooking at this moment. But it was a great honor to have Nick on the show today. We have been planning this conversation for a few years, really. And in that time, there has been a number of things that have changed. And so having him on today, I decided to do a couple of things different. So first thing that's different is the album we're discussing today on the show is actually his album by Daughters, You Won't Get What You Want. The reason why I chose to speak about that album specifically this time is because Nick has just released his own version of the demos of You Won't Get What You Want on vinyl. I have ordered my copy, but I only ordered it a few days ago, so I don't actually have it yet, but it is on its way. And if you follow me on social media, I will post about it when I get it, because I'm really looking forward to it after having this conversation with him and kind of getting a very detailed description of what to expect for that album. I'm kind of really looking forward to getting my hands on it and putting it on my turntable. So that's kind of why I chose to do this conversation this way. And I think that it's a great one for that because him having been such an integral part of the making of that record, and he just is able to provide so much insight into it, really. Originally, obviously, when I was supposed to have him on this show, a few years back, we were going to discuss another album an album that was influential to him and to the making of this album. And he mentions it in our conversation. Obviously, we didn't discuss it and to the length that I normally would, but we just kind of gloss over it. But he mentions it. I cannot remember the name of it right now because my memory is horrible, but it's in there. So stay tuned and listen up for that. And the other thing I'm doing differently is that our conversation was so long. I actually was able to speak with Nick on the line for almost 4 hours, I think. I think we were on the phone for like 3.5 hours. So I did cut some stuff out of there. It is not the entire conversation that we had, but some of it was just kind of private conversation, just kind of stuff between us. But for the most part, I left a good portion of it in. So that's why I'm kind of making it into two parts, because if you feel like, you kind of don't want to dive in for, the almost 3 hours long that this is, then I get it. So I kind of provide you the mandatory break. And if you care to, power through it and get through all of both parts, by all means do it. That's fine. And if you want to give yourself that break and kind of come back to it later, also totally fine. So on the first part of the show, it starts off with just me and him catching up quite a bit, like for about 20 minutes, something like that. Just discussing his personal life as of right now. He's moved away to Michigan, and that kind of transition in his life that he had to go through to do that, moving from Providence out there. New family life, kind of a little bit of touching on the whole new fatherdom, which, I am the more weathered and experienced father at this point, having children that are in their, teens now. But it's just kind of nice to hear from him how well he and the family are doing, or trying to do, at least. Relationship to music, stuff like that. Obviously, inspiration and influence for this record, You Won't Get What You Want. And then, like, the second half of the conversation, there was kind of a good breaking point that we had where Nick's phone actually died. And so we had like a 10-minute break where he had to like charge a phone, something like that, and kind of then get back on the line. And so that's kind of where the second half of the conversation picks up. Essentially, that second half is more candid and discusses more about the demos album, and it also does a little bit of a track-by-track discussing You Won't Get You Want, the studio album. So that's the second half. Like I said, it's much more candid, it's much more loose. That second half, but Nick overall, I mean, just such a great guy, such a great speaker. I just had such a great time talking with him and just trying to pull some of this information out. That I got off topic a little bit at times, but it's because he kind of went off on these tangents that were touching on everything that I wanted to get to anyway. So as far as like the stuff that I was trying to mine from him in this conversation, he kind of mentioned anyway. So I think it's a pretty great conversation. If you are a very big fan of "You Won't Get What You Want" by Daughters, I think that this is the conversation for you, because Nick goes pretty deep into the whole process, what it was like making it, and then obviously my own interpretation or getting him to interpret some of those songs from a lyrical perspective, I guess. I mean, but he also dives into like what he was going through personally to kind of inspire the creation of the music, really, too. So overall, pretty great. I'm very happy with it. Sorry that it's so long, but again, you don't have to partake in all of it. Just take it in as many doses as you like. Nick's new album, the "You Won't Get What You Want" demos, is out now. It's available through a Big Cartel website. I will put the link in the show notes to grab your copy of that. It's a double album. It's a gatefold. It looks great from what I can see, and I'm just really looking forward to getting my copy. Thank you very much, folks, for tuning in. All that we ask here at Psychic Static and Vinyl and Vision is that you do all the things you do with the internet. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, rate, review, all of those things. They help us out immensely, and they cost you nothing, which is wonderful. If you do care to help us out in a financial way, you can always visit our website, www.psychic-static.com. And, there's links there to all of our stores, like my online web store for my records, the Bandcamp pages for all of the bands that we represent and we put out the records for, and so forth. But as of right now, please go visit Nick's site and pick up that record. There are very few copies remaining from what he tells me. So do it now, sooner than later, or fear missing out. FOMO, right? So thank you very much, folks. Enjoy. Hello, Nick Sadler.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. Hey, man.
How's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm all right. I'm trying to find the light that makes me look the least exhausted.
Yeah, don't worry about it. It's early in the morning. This is unheard of.
I'm in a strange part of Michigan. It's actually not strange. It's very beautiful here. It's just it's like upside down land for me, and it's kind of far away from a lot of things people like us would normally be near. I'm like in the middle of nowhere. I'm in eastern Michigan, and it's like obviously conservative and a lot of big box retail type stuff. This is a very family oriented area where I am. It's pretty amazing, actually, but
yeah.
For everything else, it's harder.
Sure. So suburb like, you mean?
Yeah,
rural?
Sort of. It's like woodsy. Michigan is filled with these like areas where they knocked down lots of trees and then just built a lot of houses that sort of look the same. So, Edward Scissorhands or like even the movie Poltergeist, which is the part of the premise of that movie is that the guy who lives in the house is a part of a development firm that makes houses that kind of look the same, and they've built a house on top of a burial ground. So Michigan is filled with this type of stuff, and that's where I am in so many ways,
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, so you're transitioning okay, you think? I mean, you've been there for about a year now, is it?
We got here in September, basically the 1st on the dot. And the transition has not gone well. This couldn't have gone worse, to be honest, in some respects. But there are positives, and I try to stay focused on those things when I can, because otherwise it would just be madness, trying to, wrap my head around on the totality of our situation right now. But we came to Michigan to escape the rising cost of living in Rhode Island. I mean, we were operating at a deficit, so it was only a matter of time before we were going to be in some serious trouble, since Rhode Island has become one of the most expensive places in the country.
Right.
And we got pregnant. Landlord raised the rent 35% immediately, and that happened to coincide with Rhode Island Energy, a private company, coming in to take over for the national grid that Rhode Island was on for so long. So the delivery charges immediately went up to private.
Right.
I'm sure you're familiar, but it went up to
yeah.
private rates, and all of a sudden I was paying $200 a month just electric. We were living in the dark. It was crazy.
Right.
And so suddenly there were bills mounting up. We're about to be parents and so on and so forth. So our jobs weren't, I think they wanted to help us, but there's just only so much they could do.
Sure.
It wasn't going to be enough. So we came out here. It's much cheaper. Our home situation is light years better. But finding money out here has been just like this nightmare. So that's why I started doing that LP. I'm literally paying our bills on the sales of that demos record. That's the whole.
Wow.
That was the whole point. I never would have done it if we weren't in this situation where it was getting scary.
Right,
we have a baby, so it's like I don't care what it looks like from the outside that I have to do that record, but I have to feed a baby. So that's what it's coming down to, and I don't want my son to feel any kind of impact from any of this transitional stuff that we're dealing with in our lives.
Right. And he's how old now? Under a year? No, he's over a year.
On the 12th, he's going to be a year and a half.
Cool, man. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. It's awesome. It's super cool. He says he got sick a couple months back, and during that downtime, his language exploded. Not much else to focus on, so all of a sudden he can say tons of stuff. He says the word abacus with clarity. It's crazy. And now he's stringing words together and letting us know. Like yesterday, I paused on our walk, and he went, "Keep going," and pointed forward. And I was like, "When did you learn that?"
That's amazing.
So it's a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, you're a very
he's amazing.
You're a very articulate person yourself, so I can imagine that he's picking that up from a little bit from you as well.
I try to be very communicative with him, a lot of direct eye contact, a lot of acknowledging his stuff, just being in his world from day one. And then his mother and I are both kind of verbose, chatty people in our own ways. And so he's just around a lot of communication. And his mom is on FaceTime with his grandmother and his auntie and his cousins and stuff like daily. So there's just a huge amount of dialogue. And like all parents, he's inundated with books.
Right. Good.
We've inundated him with books. So, that said, it might just be who he is. We have no idea. You just kind of try.
Right. Absolutely.
And see what surfaces.
My oldest just turned 18.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's it's the whole different spectrum of that, but it's still, challenging every day. I mean, every day there's something where you're like kind of still learning, still figuring things out to a degree, But thankfully, my son is also on the autism spectrum, so thankfully he's actually fully verbal. So communication is still possible. There is definitely still some challenges there because he definitely does kind of trip up on things and kind of maybe is confused by certain things. But it's still great. I'm still super happy with him. He surprises me every day.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, when I have a magical daydream level conversation with an imaginary person in my mind about someone's interviewing me and they're asking me like, what's parenting like and all this other stuff, which no one really ever would, right? But in my brain, I'm like brushing my teeth and I'm just, off in space thinking about all this stuff. I tell them that, you'll have some difficulties, things that are just hard for you as a human being who is now a parent, in a certain stage of their life. And then when that stage passes, you might have a thought that's like, oh man, I'm so glad we don't have to do that particular task anymore. And then two things happen is like you start to miss it because it's a part of this larger story about what's really happening. And then the other part is you might even cherish some of this suffering, right? Because you're doing it for your kids. So it becomes like this point of beauty. And then on the other side of the coin, a new difficulty emerges immediately that matches wherever they are developmentally. And so now you're shifting lanes to a new set of tasks or learning curves or whatever. And so I'm realizing as a parent of a 1.5-year-old that like some things will be relieved that feel difficult to you or taxing or exhausting, and just something else will step in and kind of put pressure on those soft spots from a different angle, you know, and not to say that any of that's bad. It's a part of this hilarious paradoxical thing about parenting where you're like, oh, thank God, you know, he sleeps through the night now. But then there's something else that happens and you're like, holy shit, for the next like 4 hours, I got to do this with my kid. And when it's done, I'm going to be toast, you know? Right. You know?
Yeah.
Like I woke up today and I washed all these dishes that we were just too tired for last night. And it's like, no one necessarily chooses that. No one's like, you know what I want to do? I want to get up at like 7 and just hand wash a shitload of dishes right now. You know, and
that's the parent struggle, man. I did the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's how it
And
goes, man.
It's a point of pride and joy and all this other stuff. It's like this level of suffering becomes like this piece of beauty that's happening in your life as well.
Yeah, and it also just becomes commonplace. It's just the routine, just day to day. You know.
Yeah. So yeah, that's right. Yep.
All right.
Yeah, well, I love it, man. It's great.
Good. I'm glad to hear it, man. And you're looking great. It's good to see you again.
Thanks. Yeah, it's been a while. Years, I guess. I think last time I saw you was literally the first time I met you. Was like
we've met on a couple of occasions. No, I think we met at Brent's house once for one of his birthday cookouts.
Oh yeah,
that was the first time
right.
I think I actually got introduced to you, and then after that, it probably was like at that Lydia lunch show at AS220.
That's what I was thinking. It was the one that sticks out to me is Lydia Lunch at AS220.
Yeah.
It's funny, too, because I walked by her sitting at her table that night, and I was not in a good headspace. I was trying super hard to get out and just be around people. But it was difficult for me to do anything like that, including people I've known for like 20 years, you know, like Eric Paul or something, you know. Yeah. It's like that's somebody I've known forever, like my entire adult life. Anyway, I walked by Lydia's table, and she did like this kind of like double take. And I assumed it was because of my appearance or something. A lot of people were surprised to see that my appearance had changed so dramatically. But she handed me a flyer. And then like a couple of years later, I ended up on her podcast. And I forgot to ask her about that. But I was told years ago that she was like aware of our band and used to want to work with our vocalist. And it was kind of like this known thing in the pipeline. Sometimes musicians kind of have this like, you know, we know about each other. We would like to work with each other, you know, kind of like,
yeah, of course.
Do you have a crush on me? Passing the note in the pipeline. And then, you know, hey, my friend likes you, like kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
But I don't know if that was ever real. It didn't come to fruition, but I did her podcast and that was pretty interesting.
Yeah. I've heard some things about her as far as like, you know, how challenging that can be. Kind of like, I actually met her that night too. And like, I was just scared. I was just so intimidated. I was so intimidated. Like she just like saw right through me. Like she literally, like I could literally feel her burn her eyes like right through me. And like, I just didn't even know what to say. I was just like, hi, it's nice to meet you. Like, then that was pretty much the extent of it. So
yeah, even if she couldn't, and you were in her mind, from her perspective, if you were totally opaque psychologically as a person,
yeah,
there's something about somebody who projects this like, I am not impressed with like, you know what I mean? And even if it's a put on or like a learned behavior or something like that, it can be disarming somehow.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was really weird.
You know, these like the banter that people have before podcasts and stuff, especially the video recorded ones, you know, like the intro, like, hey, what's up? How's it going, Lydia? Hi, Tim. Hi, Nick. You know, you have a little chit chat before you jump into it. And, which is not always the case, but we did, super friendly. Knew a lot, knew things about what I was doing with my life in music, and had complimentary things to say and stuff like that. And it was like, you could see that Lydia was not going out of her way to be particularly intimidating or anything like that. I mean, I was a guest, so
yeah,
but it wasn't like edgy. It wasn't any of like the Lydia myth stuff in real life. It was just talking to a person.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, you know, I'm sure that is the case. There is a certain factor of like when you're in performance mode where something else might take over too, and I think that's her thing, right? Is that she kind of has intimidating thing about her, you know?
Yeah, that's part of the character.
Yeah.
You know, but we have this as performers, and some people who are really good at it, they never turn it off, or they can't put it down, and it becomes like their identity on some level.
Right.
I think about that stuff a lot because I don't really care about music anymore. But and I feel like I was in this like spell, this like identity spell, you know, because you can just buy the outfit and put it on, put it in your Instagram bio, what your identity is, and everyone's like, done, good. And then they just roll with that as the truth. It's a strange concept, and we're doing it all the damn time.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it's purchasable. It's something that you can buy, and you know, a lot of things that used to be costly when you and I were kids are just free. And what does that say about their value? You know what I mean?
Right,
I used to have to go to these shows and buy these records and I had to buy countless dog shit records trying to figure out what the good ones were, you know, and now it's like, I got to deal with some like 16-year-old who can Google the entire history of everything I lived through and tell me everything about it, you know, in an instant. This person can become like a master of this shit right away. So it just, it becomes like this watery thing. And on an existential level, you begin to wonder, what the hell have I been doing with this information all my life, thinking it had more value than it really does.
Right. Well, I mean, things are different on an informational basis these days. You know, I mean, like everyone's inundated with so much stuff now. Whereas, you know, when we were growing up, it was like, yeah, you did have to kind of just like take a shot and buy and spend the money, buy something and see if it was worth it or not. And that kind of sucked. But I mean, you know, it also made you kind of more frugal, kind of made you think twice about what you were going to invest your time into, you know.
I'll tell you what, my first apartment cost me $125 a month back in the cheap days of Providence, Rhode Island. And I had so many bad records from this experience of just like, you know, that I was selling my CDs at the local record store and just paying my rent on like used CD stuff. Wow. And that didn't last a huge amount of time, but it, you know, I got some mileage out of that. And it was because of like, you know, who knows how many death metal records, and that's the worst genre to be guessing about because it's so samey in many instances. There's not a lot of like groundbreaking things happening at all times in death metal. There's more generic shit in that world than there are like people who are trying to like push forward. Sure. So if you're buying it based on the artwork or the name, that's the worst. And you're going to end up with like 200 fucking CDs that when you sell them back, they're worth like 80% less.
Right. You know? Of course. Yeah.
But if it's like the year 2000, you can pay your rent on that for several months.
Yeah. That seems like one of those genres where a lot of that material, that physical media, whether it be CD or vinyl, actually has like a kind of high resale value. Like now specifically.
Yeah, I don't even, you know, I don't know. I don't collect records. I don't really even own it. I don't own a record player. I don't own hardly anything. For a long time, I was carrying around like test pressings of my own records, you know?
Right.
And even those kind of lost value to me. And I mailed all of them to a good friend of mine who used to be the daughter's booking agent, but he's also just like, he was a huge fan of the music. And one day I figured out that this dude had like all these variants of our records they had been collecting for years since around the time we met. And so I just mailed this dude all my test pressings. So I don't quite understand this thing where like people are buying records that are expensive because I've never had any fucking money. So just to even entertain, like I would love to have all these horror movie soundtracks that are on vinyl.
Sure.
Nowadays, and there's even labels that are releasing like the sound effects, spooky sound effects tapes and stuff on vinyl, or even reissuing them as tapes. And I used to collect those in high school and just listen to like the spooky Halloween sound effects tapes. I love all that shit, but like how the fuck does anybody afford this stuff? I don't understand. And as a creator, I'm like, there's no possible way. I can either afford my tools or I can buy these records. So, I've been using YouTube and things like this to listen to music for like ever.
Yeah, of course. Sure.
That's like the best I can do if I'm going to participate,
No, and that's fine, man. I mean, like, the physical media thing, it's tricky business these days. I really don't understand it as a person who sells records and who makes records. I don't understand it, but I mean, I'm thankful that there are people that have some expendable income that are willing to throw it down on a record or two,
And that's all it is. It's just like I'm living in a different lane. Yeah. That's really the answer. Like I have the money where I can buy some records. It's like, and then the other person says, I just don't have that. I would like to, but I don't have that shit.
Right. It's all priorities, man. It's just like, what do you want to put your money towards? Some people fucking put it into this, what we think might be the stupidest shit ever, but whatever, I guess it makes them happy. So that's great.
Coffee.
Sure. Coffee's good.
You
I
know,
like coffee.
I've got my coffee down to a very minimal expense while we're living through this moment. That's my expense. I buy like a $7 bag of generic, like Walmart, or there's a supermarket here called Kroger coffee. And I drink it black with ice, so I can't even taste it. So I just get through my day.
Yeah, man. You gotta get it wherever you can, I guess.
Yeah, dude.
All right. Well, so we should start this thing, huh?
Yeah, sure. You know, if there's something in here that you want to edit in, feel free.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, I kind of have a lot of questions for you because, you know,
Sure.
first of all, I mean, we've been trying to kind of have this conversation for a long time now, and now it's kind of come to the point where we're doing it, but we're also doing it in a different way because we want to discuss your album, You Won't Get What You Want, as opposed to an album that, you know, influenced you or that you think was important to you.
Right. Yeah. And if we're started, I would just make a quick note. Not that he'll ever hear this, but I ended up meeting the person I think is probably the principal creative voice behind the record we were going to do, which was called Dream Seeds by the band Extra Life. And Charlie, who is the vocalist in that band, and that's one of those things where like people have told us socially we're kind of swimming around each other in some ways.
Right.
Like I was surprised to find out that Charlie apparently liked Daughters. And that was very flattering to me because I just think so highly of that person's stuff. So that was the record we were going to do. We were going to do Dream Seeds by this excellent band called Extra Life, a totally underheard band. That's a difficult record to listen to for a variety of reasons, but it's highly unique. And for anyone who could hear that record and feel like they didn't like it, it's also actually complex. That's a piece of complex music all the way around.
Right. I mean, I remember, so I did listen to that record and like, you know, I was kind of like getting into it, starting to do a little bit of research, which from what I can remember, because this was like a few years back now, I think, it seemed difficult. Like it seemed like, not that lyrical content isn't necessarily important and that it kind of like, you know, influences me in a way, but I mean, like, unfortunately lyrics are kind of like the conveyor that an artist has. Like if you're in a band that plays music that has lyrics, unfortunately that's what the fans kind of gravitate to immediately, you know. And that's what you kind of draw from, and that's what kind of starts making up your mind of like what this band is and like what they do, you know.
Yeah.
So it was kind of difficult lyrical content. It was like these like really kind of grotesque stories, I imagine, from what I can remember.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to put words in anyone's mouth, so that's always tough when you're discussing that stuff. The things that stick out to me are like some pretty straightforward stories having to do with topics like abortion and what it feels like to be a part of that, and super dark shit. You know,
right.
Which, you know, I'm kind of rebelling against dark stuff. I just don't think it's very good for our worldview, and some people tend to lean into it, and it tends to continue to color how they see things. And even if those things are real and true, I just don't think they're very good for living a life. And so I'm kind of pulling away from dark stuff when I can, and try to see the world differently. And music is a part of that. And so but you know, without the lyrics, even there's just like these unprecedented moments musically that emerge. Some of their timbres are unique. The vocals are highly unique. Just the way they're sung, you know, Charlie's voice is very unique. Right. His approach, very unique.
Yeah. I could see a similarity to what you made, like with Daughters and the last album specifically, like You Won't Get What You Want. There's definitely similarities there.
That makes sense. I mean, Extra Life was a part of my listening habits in general from before that, but throughout the period when we were writing You Won't Get What You Want, and was a part of this like little collection of inspirations that were like consistent in that period of my songwriting stuff. Yeah. And so I was really looking up to Extra Life, and some of those people are in all kinds of things that have names like like Z's. I'm pretty sure there were some members of the band Z's who were also fantastic. I saw a video recently. I think they have, I believe his name is Toby from the band KO Dot might be in that in Extra Life now. They did a record or two in recent years. They like quote unquote came back with new material, and it's good. Anyway, so they were all a part of that. So if it entered into You Won't Get What You Want on some level, that would just make sense because it was one of the few things that I would be okay with making an appearance or having an influence in some way.
Sure.
Out of the many things that I'm listening to, you know.
Right. Well, I mean, like
White Zombie. I love White Zombie, but I don't necessarily want to hear it in my own stuff.
No, right.
You know?
I mean, but some things leak in, you know, kind of subconsciously, you know, like you kind of can't help it, and like you're not thinking about it, but it just is there, right? So because it's part of your DNA. I mean, like I don't even know like if you've ever like practiced covering music, like actually just kind of like as just a form of practice, like learn how to play other people's songs, and then that kind of maybe colors the way you start to write your own music.
Not a ton, you know, believe it or not. I was not usually interested in stuff like that. It wasn't like a focal point in any way. I've done that type of work though, because you know, like the first band I could join was a Smashing Pumpkins cover band that this one kid with a guitar in my town, Central Falls, Rhode Island, he was obsessed with Smashing Pumpkins. I love the Smashing Pumpkins, but I wasn't obsessed at that time at all. I just wanted to play in a band. So I joined his like Smashing Pumpkins cover band, and I was probably like 14 or something, 13 maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
And then later, when I was down on my luck, I ended up being a paid sound engineer at this like small technologically driven church. I was a secular member doing sound for a church that had like a big live band and all this media. And when I put in my notice to leave eventually, they convinced me to go play in the band as a secular member. So for a while I was on stage at Sunday church services playing these like contemporary like church music.
Sure. Wow.
And getting paid for it. And that was a strange experience. It wasn't strange. I don't want to say that because I don't think anybody necessarily was doing anything strange there. I met a lot of great people.
Right.
But other people were doing things like prostrating themselves before me on this, you know, on their knees in front of the stage. And kind of like, I saw people kind of having these like soft speaking in tongues kind of moments while I was up there.
Oh, okay.
But I would say, to your point, you're right, because the few things that I've had to do learning other people's material, of course, expands my understanding of music in general. Like, you know, I'm a paid member of this guy, Greg Pachato's backing band. I have to learn his sort of like dark alt rock type material.
Right.
And there's still things for me to learn and assimilate there. Sometimes I play bass in this band Soft Kill. I haven't really done it all that much, but learning that person's music from the perspective of bass, even applying to music college, learning some jazz standards, which has really not ever been a part of my pool of interests, was super helpful because you have to learn it the right way. And so you're going to pick up some theory, or you should anyway, you know, so you're not completely miming it anyway. Yeah. But mostly I just try to assimilate the music of others through listening, like serious repetition that drives the people around me insane. Like if I get interested in a song, they're going to have to hear that song with me like 200 times, you know?
Right. So, cause you're self-taught, right?
Yeah. I don't really know much. I have some theory under my belt. But it's really basic. You know, I did like two semesters of community college, and then Gary Potter, who plays in the Daughters live band for a long time now, he's a true professional musician and an astounding guitar player, but he knows basically everything about theory. So he's probably the principal source of like any theory I have is probably Gary, and certainly techniques in guitar playing that made me a better guitar player, which led to being able to do stuff like You Won't Get What You Want. Because there's more traditional playing on that record than other Daughters records. Probably just come from Gary.
Okay.
You know, just asking him questions over the years.
Yeah.
and him being generous enough to share with me this thing that he makes everybody else pay for.
Sure. Right. Well, he's on the payroll, I guess. I mean, yeah, it's not like he's doing it.
He has to show me.
That's right. It's better for the band. What? So wait. So did he join after the self-titled album? Before You Won't Get What You Want?
He joined up as a live member only. We
right.
lost Brent Frattini, who was a member of the band for years and did Hell Songs with us, our second record.
Yeah.
Brent went on to do other stuff, but he was in this band, The Cancer Conspiracy. He's in the band There.
Yeah.
There.
Not there.
Right, there.
There is a there band. Right. It's just there.
Oh, I was thinking about, actually, I was getting it confused with the burger spot. It's there in Providence. Anyway,
okay.
and you know, so he's a great dude. We're still friends and all that stuff. And technically, Gary would have been Brent's replacement, but we realized when Brent left that we didn't want to add any members necessarily. We didn't want to add anybody to the creative situation. We wanted to see if we could just do all that stuff as a 4-piece. And actually, it was funny because after Brent left, people started to lose interest slowly in the band, and it kind of just fell into my lap that I was becoming like the principal songwriter because I was the only one who was still actively thinking about it and coming up with material. And then eventually the material turns into kind of a cohesive vision, and then I have an idea for how it should be produced and all this other stuff. And then when all is said and done, it's like, okay, now you're the guy doing all this stuff.
Right.
So when Brent leaves, that's kind of marks the point of like, it's far less collaborative from that point on.
Okay.
And then Gary joins as a live member. I would like Gary to be in the band as like a writing member on some level because he deserves it. But we're not really an active band, and for a lot of that time, we also weren't an active band. So the opportunity to have Gary in on a more on a deeper level, it just never really presented itself.
Yeah, right. That man, you've said so many things that I kind of want to touch on.
Sure.
So you were saying Brent left after Hell Songs, so prior to the self-titled album. The self-titled album, there was such a long gap between the release of that and then You Won't Get What You Want. So I mean, when you were saying that it was becoming less collaborative, you were kind of holding up the reins of like kind of driving the thing and kind of creating the music by yourself ultimately, right? Or
yeah, well, so with the self-titled, we were still in this habit of trying to flesh things out, at least with our drummer John and I.
Right.
So during self-titled, we would get together. I want to say, I mean, it wasn't consistent, but like we would probably say something like once a week. But even that was like, hey, I got plans or I got stuff to do, and so we were not being super consistent about it.
Right.
But I have had a very narrow obsession with music and art and how I felt about myself in those contexts. And even when Daughters is not doing anything, even now I'm constantly thinking of things that I wish I could do for Daughters. Like there's something about this particular entity that is like this. It's got life. It's probably just I'm so familiar with it. It's been going on for so long that it's like it's got life work type vibes to it, and I'm so. The practice of thinking about things in the context of Daughters is so ingrained now that even now when I'm not thinking about doing anything with that project, I will have creative ideas that I'm like, this is meant for Daughters.
Right.
And so it's been like this for a long time. And ultimately, like I could tell that people were losing interest. We weren't working as hard as I wanted us to. Time was going by. We weren't doing any of the things any of our peers were doing in terms of like, we're going to write a record here, come out, go on tour, and then we know we need to start writing another record around this time if we want to keep. We were doing. Daughters never did anything by the book, literally at all. We never said, "Hey, we need to make money so that when we come home, we have a place to live." We were like perfectly content with like, "Hey, I'm going to ask my friend if I can live on their couch with a bag and some guitars and shit." Right. And we most of us did that and lived in these really bizarre situations for a very long time. And that goes all the way through rehearsals, getting better in an instrument, learning about new gear, all these things that drive innovation in music, like understanding new technologies that are coming in and whatever else. We just didn't do any of that shit. And also we didn't have any money for that some of this stuff that I'm talking about anyway, so it was kind of moot.
Right.
And it, like I said, it just sort of happened that one day we had enough material that I had put together. We had enough of a vision that I had slowly pieced together. I knew what I wanted to do with the rhythm section. I had all these ideas. I just had everything in place by the time we make the self-titled record. Meaning, I'm rambling here, but meaning, I don't think it was any member of the band's desire to have one person become like the driving creative force behind the band. It just kind of like life steps in, and that's what happened. I was holding on to music and art for dear life, and it was creating a lot of havoc around me, whereas other people were doing things like starting long-term relationships, buying houses, having kids. Lex was sober. He had conquered his like addiction stuff at the time, and was worried that if he played music, he would be tempted to start drinking or something like this. This is all common knowledge, by the way. I'm not like revealing some secret story. He used to talk about this in interviews. But,
right.
Real life was encroaching upon this fucking fantasy life that we had been living in for so long. And I just like refused to let it go. Even now there's a bubble somewhere in my consciousness that's like trying to like hold on to it as some kind of like existential life raft. But and so, one day you're the guy who's doing that. And the same thing for You Won't Get What You Want. We agreed that we wanted to make a record. We didn't want to like come back and be a band that plays reunion shows and goes and plays the old records for a bunch of, we understood who we are and what we wanted as people. And that was to make new music. That's really the thing that is exciting to the members of the group. And, but then real life was underway. We didn't even live in the same states. And so eventually it's the same thing. It just kind of fell into my lap and became incumbent upon me to kind of, if we really wanted to do this, and if I really wanted to do it, I was going to have to like just accept our situation and just kind of go forward.
Right.
And it worked out well for me personally, creatively, because it was the closest I ever came to doing more things that just I wanted to do with our group. If You Won't Get What You Want, rather than having everything be tempered by a consensus.
Right. Yeah. The democracy kind of makes it difficult to kind of get ideas across.
Yeah. I mean, I might have the best idea of my life, but if they don't get it or they don't like it, then we're probably not going to use it unless there's a fight and I like force it on them. And then at that point, what fun is that? Are they really going to be into doing something effectively if it doesn't move them in some way?
Right.
A professional would say yes. A professional would say yes. You would just be like, I'm an entertainer on some level, and this is what it means to be a professional entertainer and a performer. But that is just not who we are.
Right.
So,
I hear you. Look, I want to jump around a little bit because you're touching on so many things that I kind of wanted to get into, and I actually have some questions for you. So normally I kind of do a track by track for the album, and so I actually have established some questions based on some of the songs on the album. So.
Wait, you're talking about the proper album, or are you talking about the demos LP that I did?
No, I'm talking about the proper album, You Won't Get What You Want.
Okay.
Because that's what we're supposed to be focusing on today.
Okay, all right.
But we will talk about the demos album as well, of course. So Satan in the Wait is one of the songs on the album. It's the third one, and it was the first single. So I actually found a quote from you on Treble Zine magazine.
Treble Zine.
Yeah, so you said, "This is the daughter's song that represents the strongest expression of who I am as a person and what my innate melodic sensibilities are. My biggest musical accomplishment to date."
Yeah, I think that probably stands on some level. I've said this a lot of times, but for a long time when I was saying it, interviews exclusively went to Lex because we weren't popular like we were in 2019. So like, as we already established, people tend to identify immediately with the vocalist for their voice and the lyrics and all this other stuff in their face. And so all the few interviews that we got, they went to Lex. So probably nobody heard me saying this, but sometimes I think that if I were not in this band, I probably would never listen to it. You know what I mean? And I got a little stoned the other night. I take weed gummies to go to sleep because I have diagnosed insomnia and I have some sleep issues, and I'm constantly in this fight to sleep. So I took some weed gummies, and then I looked at my phone, which is the worst possible thing you could do if you're a little stoned. But somebody tagged me in a video of a dude doing a reaction to an Old Daughter song. And whatever clip he had, I had heard it from a different perspective for the first time. It was like a different entry point, and it made me recognize something about the vocal performance that I never noticed before, and I was really appreciative of.
Okay.
And I was like, wow, that's a lot better than I used to think it was. Wow, that's pretty cool. So I was like, you know what, let me go listen to that now and like try to have an appreciation for it. And then I put the song on, and I listened to it, and then it went into this auto rotation through our catalog.
Oh, okay.
And I was like appalled. I was like, some of this music is so silly. I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, we knew some of it was silly because we were doing that intentionally, but other shit where we were like being serious, and like, this is silliness. This is silly, stupid music. But I don't feel that way about Satan in the Wait.
Okay.
Satan in the Wait still feels like an accomplishment to me because I've struggled throughout my life with minimalism. And so it became a goal on that record and the previous record to try to find some way to be myself in music, but to set a goal to reach a state of effective minimalism while still sounding like Daughters. You know, because it just seemed like this... it seemed like it would be an accomplishment, right? Because anyone can stack a bunch of shit on top of each other, especially in the digital era. You know, you can just make 100 tracks, a bazillion tracks, and have it function. But like, it's definitely harder to have a compelling piece of music with few things going on. It's way harder,
right,
you know, to get somebody to like pay attention. You know, but that record, that song in particular, the minimalism of that song, the effectiveness of it as a cohesive, structured piece of songwriting, just as a songwriter, you know, looking at the mechanics of it.
Yeah.
Psychologically, I think it does a lot. It's got twists and turns in there. The sonic architecture of the piece and some of the elements that appear are still appeal to me, and I feel like we're used well in terms of driving the piece and making the music feel like it has momentum, especially because that whole record for the most part is rigidly snapped to the grid, meaning there's no one's playing ahead of the beat or after the beat or anything like that. It's not organic. The idea was cold as hell, so everything is super rigid rhythmically.
Okay.
Which can make it hard to create a feeling of momentum in a piece of music, because it is so you know. So I'm proud of that fact. I love repetition in music hugely, and I can't do the things that I want to do in Daughters with repetition, or I couldn't at the time. But I was still, throughout that record, I was able to find ways to create this hypnotic repetition. And so the very end of that song has that. A lot of the songs themselves, the body of that song without the ending is all very repetitious. That song and several other songs are based on some simple concepts that I picked up from hip hop music, which is essentially like a static set of elements and with things that change around that to give it dynamic.
Right.
So Satan in the Wait's another good example because the drums are very fixed. The bass is quite fixed. The bass is like non-committal. It's like it's committing to like a single note or two, in this really flippant, ridiculous way. You could argue that it's super committed to those notes, or you could argue that it's like lazy. And I like that about it. You know what I mean? That it's kind of like, it's not giving you a lot. It's just there. And I love that it's like a glitch. I love that repetition about it.
Okay. See, so Satan in the Wait, when I was kind of like thinking about it, like I came up with this idea that like, it was the first single, right? And so I was thinking like, well, you must have had a lot of say in what became the first single, considering you were kind of so heavily involved with the songwriting and producing of all of these songs, right?
Yeah, well, it does, you know, Daughters is frustrating like that from my perspective. Because and that's just my cross to bear. You know, it's really not even worth complaining about, because it is what it is. But like, you know, I do all this work, and then once it's done, it's not my work, it's our work.
Right.
Especially for Lex, because that's one thing I don't do. I don't write lyrics, and I'm not singing. That's not my voice. I have some influence, but that's not the working relationship. It's very much understood between us that like we're not really meant to be encroaching upon each other's musical territory, even within Daughters, and we don't collaborate. You know what I mean? And so, and so when it's all said and done, it becomes our thing, and really pointedly Lex's thing and my thing. Right. And so there is no one person who's like, this is what's happening, I wrote the song. That's because what you're looking at the end of the day is people investing their time and their lives in this thing together, and it almost doesn't matter who made it, because the investment is still necessary, to the exclusion of anything else anyone could be doing. So like their opinion matters. It matters. If you want this person to go on tour with you for 13 months and play songs that you wrote, you know what I mean? It's like, then they're going to need a say in some things. And so I don't have the ultimate say on hardly anything. But I gained a little more, what felt like at least, trust from the band because of the things I was able to accomplish with that record. Right. I don't think anyone wanted to do Satan in the Wait. I think it was mainly me and maybe our manager at the time. I just understood that it was the most stark shift, which is a huge focal point for me in Daughters, is trying to undermine some principal facets of the group in a way that is like entertaining and fun and artistically sound. And I just knew that it functions so well on its own that such a stark shift would only really be interesting and maybe exciting to some people. Right. That it was just a good song. Just a good song. That's it.
But also to your fan base, you know, to your credit, I mean, like you guys had taken about an 8-year break before this album came out, this being the first song to be reintroduced to the public and kind of like, you know, get things shaking up with your fan base basically, and showing them how different of a direction you're going to be going in, and what kind of almost what to expect from the record when it finally comes out, right?
I was never thinking in those terms. Okay. Like let this be a preamble or an indication of like what the record really is, because I don't know why that is necessarily, but I wasn't thinking that way. And you know, to be honest with you, I kind of was. I say this to people all the time, actually, casually, and who are interested in talking about this, that I was pretty concerned, and I felt pretty certain that this was my weakest work, and that I had lost whatever I might have had. And I was worried that I would be embarrassed with this record. And even though privately, like in my home, you know, I was very excited about certain things that were happening. I just wasn't sure that anybody else would get it. It felt like almost like a vanity thing to be enjoying it by myself with no one around, you know, like a piece of advice you could give to a musician about like, hey, how do I know if this is working? Is like, well, get up out of your chair and see if you are compelled to do anything at all when you listen to your own shit. And if the answer is no, then maybe not. And for me, I would be able to get up out of the chair and feel something for the first time in Daughters with some of this music. And anyway, so I was worried that it was going to be, I mean, I didn't care if anyone listened to it. Actually, we wanted an excuse to like travel and go on tour for a couple weeks a year and then go back to work and families and things like this. Yeah. The fact that people latched onto it the way they did is still surprising to me on some level. It seems like a fluke or something. Right. You know, like the setup of a punchline that is still unfolding. And and so it was not meant to be a preamble. I just thought that was the strongest piece of work, and I knew that for a band that had been out of the picture for so long, so many different labels turned that record down. So there seemed to be no interest from anyone other than Mike Patton, Greg, and Mark Shapiro at Ipecac. Everybody else was just like, oh, why do we need to hear a new record by some like legacy band from like the early 2000s or something? Like you could tell in trying to continue your career that because you had been around for so long, that depending on which social circle you entered into, they had a different view of what this entity was. So some people only remember the band for the first record, right? You know, and so those people are going to hear you and get what you want. Not everybody, but a lot of those people would hear that record and be like,
this isn't
what
them.
Are we doing here? Yeah, what are we doing here? And so if you try to get a record label that thinks that way, oh, this is the band who did Hell Songs, like I don't even care. You know what I mean? And so I just knew that we needed to make a new record. It needed to be groundbreaking within the context of our own group, not in the bigger picture of music in the world. I just knew that for us, it needed to be fresh and new and creative and groundbreaking on some level. And so I wanted to lead with a surprising entry. And I thought that was our strongest work. And then we have songs that I can see us following that with that I don't care quite as much about, but that would usually be somebody else's first pick, like Reason They Hate Me is becoming the most popular Daughter song. It's like come up behind Satan in the Way, and it's starting to take the lead in terms of streaming.
Right.
And I would consider that to be like a lesser song. That's,
yeah. Well, I mean, that's,
by the way, that's
fans for you. Fans kind of dictate the popularity of an album. I mean, like you were even saying, like you didn't even know and didn't care like what people would think of this album. You just kind of wanted to put it out as a reason to get out on tour and, you know, play some shows. But it ended up being received way better than you had expected.
Yeah, I mean, and it was more than just the shows too. To be fair, you know, I wanted to be a full-time musician my whole life.
Well, it's a creative outlet.
I've never achieved it.
Yeah.
I mean, I just wanted to be somebody who was making records. I mean, that's my context for who I am in the world. You know what I mean? That's the context for like how I see myself, or it was. You know what I mean? And so I needed to be engaged in that to feel like I was engaged in my own life. And so that's a principal aspect of like making things for me is like that. I understand that that's such an important part of who I am. Anytime I'm not able to really do that, it feels like I'm benched and I'm on pause, waiting for the opportunity to do that. So I would have made that record and put it out. If I was 100% sure that it was bad, I might have still done it because, you know, I want to be participating.
Right. Well, I mean, you know, and you're doing that. I mean, you are putting out records or have been up until just recently. I mean, maybe it's been through other projects. I mean, like Fang Island and Way Out. I just found this pin in this room.
Oh, nice.
I bought these two records. This was just before the pandemic happened. I bought your two Way Out records.
Oh man, that's so good because the label who put those out, they definitely lost money. Now that I'm doing a record with my own little label, and I see how expensive it is and how much work goes into it for how little return. That record, those two records came out the same year as You Won't Get What You Want, and I was working on another project with some of the guys from Fang Island called Mythless on Joyful Noise Records. We did 4 records that year, 2 Way Out records, Mythless and You Won't Get What You Want. And then Daughters got popular, and I basically just had to, like, out of nowhere, I just had to be like, sorry, Way Out, I can't. I didn't quit. We just put the band on hiatus, and then it never came back. And then we didn't get to tour on those records really or sell them for the label or anything like that. It was basically like...
no push.
You know, they... And you know, that's Brian Simmons from Atomic Action, and he's been an absolute peach about it. And you have to be grateful for that because he could be like, what the fuck, dude? Well, because it's expensive. It costs thousands of dollars. It's right. You know, and so
and it takes up a lot of room. You know, you got this whole fucking wall of records. You're like, God damn it, it's fucking
you know what? He must have knew what the deal was because I'm realizing now as I talk to you about this, he was on the first tour we did for You Won't Get What You Want. He came out with Daughters for 2 weeks to just help us out. And I think we might have even had some Way Out records in hand on that first 2-week tour. So he probably saw what was going on with us because we were sharing a hotel room. And then it was like the very next tour, it was like you're on a bus. So he probably understood that, like,
by association,
Nick's not going to be able to do Way Out right now.
Right. But you know, he had the opportunity to still push those records to a degree. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm glad you picked some up, man. I love Way Out. That's one of my favorite bands that I've ever been in.
Yeah.
And we were never, in my opinion, never able to fully actualize and reach the potential that I thought the group had. But for what we were able to do, it was one of the best experiences I've had in music, for sure.
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, I went to go see you guys play at Aurora before it closed.
Man, I miss Aurora.
Yeah, and so then I picked up those records before the pandemic happened because we didn't know that the world was going to end and close down at the time. And you were going to be playing soon, actually. I think Way Out was scheduled to play at AS220 with Haunted Horses, who I ended up speaking with.
That's right.
And that show got canceled. That was the weekend of my birthday. So I was just like, oh, my birthday's going to be awesome. There's this show happening. Like, I got all this stuff planned. And then the fucking world stopped.
Yeah, the world stopped, man. I would have enjoyed that too because the members of Haunted Horses have been very kind to us. They've come out and played with us a lot of times. We've had a lot of different dialogue over the years, and I always liked when there was some kind of crossover between Way Out and Daughters. That was noteworthy amongst the people involved. You know, like Daughters, the biggest place Daughters ever played in LA is called the Velasco, and I think we either sold it out or came close to selling it out at like 15 or 1,800 people or something like that.
Yeah.
But it was a one-off with this incredible band called Proto Martyr.
Oh, okay.
They opened for us. It was just like a one-off. They filled in a slot, and I was super proud of that because I think that band is so excellent. And I was really excited to share a stage with them. That's like the coolest part of like when your band gets popular enough where you're the headliner and you now have an influence on like who comes with you and plays with you and stuff. It's like you get to like choose these people that were like really important to you to come out and play their music. And it's super cool and flattering and fun to meet them. And I talked to them at that show about how Way Out opened for Proto Martyr at AS220 years before that, and they remembered it.
Oh, cool.
And that was a pretty cool show. If I'm not mistaken, it might have been Proto Martyr and Black Marble, or maybe those were two separate shows. But anyway, they remembered Way Out, and I thought that was so cool. And I was looking forward to the similar thing with Haunted Horses, where like, okay, now my other band will go open for Haunted Horses, and I know these guys, and that's fun. Yeah. And now they have this dude Brian McClellan in the band for the last several years, and we knew Brian for years from his other bands and stuff, and he's a sweet person as well.
Right. Cool, man.
Cool band. Did I even answer your question? I'm like tired, and I've had a lot of coffee and no food.
Okay. No, me too. Don't worry about it. It's totally fine.
Okay.
I will touch on this again, and this will be the last that we talk about this because we've kind of been like dancing around this topic for a bit now. But so what I wrote here in my notes is that it's interesting that you were the songwriter producer on the record, and so you were primarily creating the music and all the structures of it, but Lex being the vocalist and primary lyric writer, right? So you had already mentioned that how you had nothing to do with the lyrics. But so from the perspective of a songwriter that hands his music over to a lyricist, like how did you feel about what Lex would come up with lyrically to complete the full picture of what the songs were?
Yeah. So that was always from day one. I won't say day one. I would say starting my Hell Songs, because when we did our first two recordings, the 7-inch and Canada songs, I was 19 when we did our 7-inch,
right.
and 20 when we were writing Canada songs. So, a lot of experience needed to happen to start to have more preferences about what you would like to see go on with your group or just in your creative practice in general. And I wanted us to be more collaborative.
Mm-hmm.
And Lex was not about that, and okay. My interpretation for a long time was that that was a difficulty. I don't quite feel that way now. I mean, it literally was a difficulty, and I think it's possible that we would have been a better band sooner for longer had we had been more collaborative. But the reality is, though, that was just his creative preference. He needed that shit to be like his thing. And I get that because it's a human voice and it's words, and these things are a little more sensitive or can be than what I'm communicating through melodies, with whatever instrument.
Right.
Those melodies are personal to me, and I am communicating, but I can understand that it's not the same as voice.
Right, because unfortunately fans grasp onto words. It's just like, yes, the music is doing something to them, and maybe subconsciously they feel that, but it's the words that they focus on because unfortunately it's kind of like the conveyor,
Yeah, it's probably one of the reasons why there's always this weird singer, guitar player, songwriter dynamic thing happening throughout the history of like recorded music and shit, because these people want to be each other on some level. And then there's a prioritization that happens from the outside of the band. And to that point, there's a lot of things about your band that you cannot ever be in control of that are defining what it is was happening with you. And so when you're a band like Daughters and you change the way you sound all the time, and you'll kind of play with almost anybody, then what genre you are in is up to the beholder. And so very often we are thrust into genres that I'd never even heard of before. Right. And people have like shade to throw at you about it. They'll be like, oh, you're just one of these bands. And I'm like, I've never even heard of what you're talking about. Certainly didn't try that. never met or played with any of those bands. When I Google what that is, you know,
Right.
you don't have control over that shit. You don't have control over a whole bunch of stuff about your band, you know? So if
Right.
anything's working, there's like this huge element that is like, I don't know, providence. I don't know what it would be, but it's like the fact that you found each other at all and you're making anything effective that anyone likes. There's already like 1,000 miracles that needed to line up perfectly for even the beginning to happen.
Right. Well, so
Anyway.
I mean, going back to lyrics and like what Lex was kind of like adding to
Yeah.
these songs, right? Because you must have had your own kind of idea, like coming up with the music and the melodies, like what this song means to you, and then you give it to him, and then
Yep.
he has to kind of add the lyrical context to it, which now kind of paints it as a different picture, right?
Yeah, well, you know, yes and no, yes and no. Largely, yes, it'll paint it as a different picture because I don't know what the hell he's going to do, and he doesn't tell me, and we don't talk about it.
Right.
And we'll get to the studio, and that's when we find out what he's been planning to do. So nobody has any idea or any say over it. It's actually pretty shitty to be in a group with that happening. But
Yeah.
you know, I learned early on that is the way it was going to be. You know, and with Hell Songs is where I learned this. One of the many tricks that I have with dealing with something like that is that with Hell Songs, I would send Lex these demo recordings that I knew were not fully complete. This is 100% my fault. I would say 95% my fault. And I know that because now it's been many years, and I've been doing this same thing with different musicians and artists all throughout my life, and to the same result, which is they don't see the vision that I see because I'm not handing them the completed product. I have this weird habit of handing somebody something, and then unconsciously I'm like, I know what's going to happen with this, and they're going to get it, and then I'll hand it to them, and they're like, and I'm like, right, I need to just finish the thing and tell you what it is rather than trying to make you guess.
Right.
So Lex has been on the receiving end of this the whole time we've been in a band. And with Hell Songs, I would give him, I remember specifically, I gave him this piece of music, and I said, okay, this is not done. These parts, like these verses could be longer. These
Right.
other parts could be shorter. I want you to do whatever you want lyrically, and then we will adjust the music to
Right.
match and or react to what you want to do. And then he simply did not do that. And we have things on records, I won't name them, that are like incomplete songs to me with a dude singing on them because we didn't craft them together. So with Hell Songs, I learned that I need to develop the skill necessary to develop these verses and things and choruses into a length that makes sense to me and creates space for him. Because Hell Songs could not have been an easy album to figure out how to sing to, especially when you no longer want to be doing the spastic, screamy, blah, blah, blah stuff. If you're trying to figure out a new path for yourself as a vocalist,
Right.
and then this band is delivering something like Hell Songs to you, you know, and which is like has a lot of kind of like no wave sort of energy in it, and twists and turns, and is, you know, strange shit. There's not a lot of precedent for how people have sung to music like that. That was probably pretty hard on him. So realizing this, you know, I'm like, okay, well, if I want the music to be different, and I know that like I can't hand him stuff and have him go, I need this to be this many measures long so I can get these words in the way I want it, and then it sounds like a natural flow in this music.
Right.
I would just have to imagine what that is. And then I started to develop this skill set of writing music for daughters from the perspective of each member on the instrument. So like it became my task to learn their voice and their feel when they play their instruments so that I can create music that sounds natural when they play it, that they would want to play, and that gets some of my goals accomplished as well. So
Right.
when I'm writing drums for daughters, I'm writing them from the perspective of like, you know, here are things I would like to do with drums, and here's how John plays drums. And I need to combine those, understand how he plays, and then create beats that he's going to want to play.
Right.
And then try to convince him that these things that are different than what he would like to play are still good, and they're just going to expand his musical rhetoric. And nobody wants anybody in their life
To tell them
like
what to
me
do.
tell him what to do, you know.
course.
But that was our situation. If I didn't end up in that role, we wouldn't have these records, and we wouldn't have been able to do the things we did. And luckily, the trust continued to grow, and people started to understand that I had like an idea
Right.
Especially, I think of John and Sam specifically. Specifically, Sam. Sam has always been very supportive, but in terms of winning over someone's trust to be like, hey, here's what I would like you to play, that's not John's natural state to be like, yeah, tell me what to play. John wants to be creative and do interesting shit.
Sure.
You know, so to have somebody else who's wanting to do the same thing, but with a different set of ideas, you know, again, probably not super fun, but that's what it means to become a professional and to get better and better at doing this in your life. And John has, you know what I mean? And he's an incredible drummer.
Yeah, yeah. But so again, back to Lex and the lyrics and this album specifically, You Won't Get What You Want. Like, I mean, so when he gave back, like when you finally got the lyrics of what he was singing, I mean, did you feel like he nailed the appropriate lyrics, and like, did you find yourselves in sync?
No. I worked so hard on You and Get What You Want. I put way more thought into that record than is probably even necessary. I don't even know if I could do it again. And my whole life was basically like my whole consciousness, all my thoughts, my actions, my jobs, everything I was doing was basically like pointed at this record in one way or another. And I could go down a list and explain like what I mean by that. But for now, since I'm rambling today, we went to the studio, put in this huge amount of effort to get the recording that I wanted and that we wanted, to get it right. And then the last bit is Lex will then come to the studio for the first time and start recording vocal takes. Way before he got there, Seth Manchester of Machines with Magnets, the person who engineers a lot of our records,
right?
And probably John actually, but definitely Seth, and maybe our old manager Simon. These people had come up with this plan without Lex and I that were like, okay, when Lex gets here, we need to get Nick to leave. Because Nick's going to have a heart attack, because when you think about it logically, there's probably nothing Lex could do that wouldn't scare the living shit out of me after I just put on all this time into a record, and now I have this X factor coming in. I don't know what it's going to be.
Right.
And so, you know, it would have to be an absolute miracle for this dude to walk in with me in the room, start singing, and have me being like, that's it. It was never going to happen, because it was always going to be too much of a surprise. It's like throwing me an absolute shocker no matter what. So that's what happened. I went home for like 2 days and just didn't engage while and just let Lex work and let them work together. And when I came in and listened to what they had done, Lex was no longer there, and by design. And I got to listen to what he had done for the first time, and you can see that at this point, everyone in the room is just kind of like, it's like waiting to see what my reaction is going to be. Right. And some things I was pleasantly surprised. Other things I was making mental notes that we need to like make some changes and some adjustments and stuff like this. And then there were a handful of moments that I was horrified, because unfortunately I'm sort of a perfectionist, and so people like me who are perfectionists, we're struggling with anxiety. And so we create predictability as a way of mitigating this anxiety, you know? Right. And so that doesn't stop with music, you know what I mean? So to have somebody come in and me have no clue, no demos, no discussions, have no idea what the hell's going to happen. I don't know what he's even going to name my songs. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Which sucks, you know, because it's like, I don't want the word Satan on my music. Not because I'm like, oh, Satan, no thanks. It's just too corny. And so, you know, when the words Satan in the Wait came out and that's the name of the song, I'm like, okay, well, I guess the best piece of music I ever fucking wrote is called Satan in the Wait. I'm like, all right, well, it is what it is. I would not have chosen that, but I'm not the only one here. This isn't the Nick show. And so, you know, there was like, I remember hearing the chorus to The Reason They Hate Me for the first time, and I was like, fucking trash the whole record. Get this shit out of here. We're fucked. It was, you know, don't tell me how to do my job. I was like, what? You know, I was not thinking in those terms at all. But
there was his argument, right? There was his argument to you right there.
Yeah, don't tell me how to do my job. For all I know, that song's about me. I have no idea. I've seen this in bands before where like vocalists are writing songs about members and just not saying anything. But
sure.
Maybe that song is about. I have no idea, but that would if Lex were here, he would say, of course, you would think that song was written about you, right? That's just kind of that's our oil and water nature, Lex and I.
Right.
Anyway, I came to really like it, and I think in his way, he was reacting to my innate pop sensibilities, and so that was the next piece I was going to tell you, is that what ends up happening in some situations, not all the time, is that you create a piece of music with mood and tone and setting that then have an influence on the listener, including your vocalist. And so on some level, even subconsciously, they begin to sort of craft what they're doing as a reaction to what you're giving them. And You Won't Get What You Want is probably the highest form of that Daughter's ever reached, where Lex was finding that some of the things that I was writing, he was actually really liking, probably for the first time in our band. I think he kind of is like me, where like he's always kind of like, what is this band? Do I even like this?
Right.
You Won't Get What You Want was probably the closest we came in all respects. And I think some of the nihilism of his vocals either was a parallel in our lives as people, as individuals, just being alive. And then some of that was a reaction to what I was bringing to the table musically.
Right. Well, so I know that I've heard before that how you guys have this, somebody has called out the album as being like, sounding like mental illness, right? And you both have kind of corroborated that it's true. Like, between the two of you, obviously separately, you have acknowledged that there is some mental illness that you were kind of trying to maybe subconsciously address through the music, and the ultimate end result was fairly clear, where fans could kind of pick up on that.
I didn't believe in that. The record even came out, and I was still kind of against it. Our former manager Simon was telling me that there were things in the record that I had put in there that I didn't consciously choose, and I at the time, it's so stupid because of course that's the case. That's the case with everything human and psychology. It's like everything anybody says or does is like a tell about them. And,
right.
And obviously a creative endeavor is going to be that as well. And I'm talking about unconsciously. There are things that people are communicating every day, all day long, unconsciously, that they're not like intending to necessarily communicate. And the record is definitely that. I have a handful of things that I struggle with, and so does Lex. And I think those years I felt very much like sort of lost as a person, I was on pause with music. I mean, seriously, anytime music comes back in any serious capacity, I suddenly feel found, like grounded and anchored into my life. But in those years, I was doing a shitload of music, but it wasn't like a career or anything like that. It wasn't consistent. It was like I was running a rehearsal space, and I was doing live sound. I was playing in several bands that were actively doing shows and recording. I got into a music college. I got into an art college for sound art. And I was just, everything was music, but it hadn't galvanized to this point where like, that's what my life was. I was still like, all right, I have to like do all these other things because I'm in a normal life and my hobby is music. And it just felt so distant. And I was feeling very much lost in those years, not understanding like what I should do with my life. Eventually, I just said, well, this is my life, and I'm just going to keep foolishly trying to make these records, knowing that my return is never going to do anything for me as a person. It's never going to lift me out of poverty. It's not going to lift my parents out of poverty. It's not going to change anything about my circumstances, but I am the type of person who is like a sad, tortured artist living in a fucking $750 garret attic apartment in Providence, and I'm perfectly okay with that if I can make my songs. And so that's what my life was. It was like just acceptance that I was just like not a happy person. And, and I was thinking a lot about nihilism at the time. I moved past this like nihilistic, entertaining the concept of nihilism. It's not obviously not a good thing, and it's popular and casual now and ingrained in our society to have this like crisis of meaning in a way that's like cool. And I went through that years ago now, and it's just fucking poison, dude. And It makes me wonder about that record. I don't want any of my music to further somebody's negative worldview. I think it's dog shit, and I hope it's not doing that to other people. Well, to hear a record and be like, that's how I feel, that's how it is, and let me just move forward with my life with these like series of fucking hurdles that I'm giving myself because I have a shit view of life.
Right.
And anyway, when we were making that record, somebody who mattered very much to me had committed suicide. And I think that just put me in this head state for years that I could not get out of. It was such a shock, came out of nowhere. This person I was close to this person. I had a huge amount of respect for them artistically. They really were an inspiration for me. And I actually knew this person, and I felt this person knew me. And so even though I had experienced death in my life, this person's death did something to change how I was seeing the world and stuff like that.
And this was before or after this record came out?
This was right at the beginning of making it.
Oh, okay.
And so I think I just like buried it, didn't process it, and I think it came out in a several ways in You Won't Get What You Want that were unconscious. And I was listening to a lot of dark music. I always have. So that's another part of it, is like when dark music somehow makes it into the mainstream, it becomes like this like mythical, not always, but sometimes it becomes this like mythical thing where people wonder about it and the people who made it and stuff like that. But if you were to like take the mainstream part of it, if you were to take if you only beneath the water where the glacier is and you put us back in that context, you will meet me and like hundreds of people that I know who like dark music or strange music or creative music or adventurous music or anti-music or any of this other stuff. We all know each other and in this community. What makes it weird is that for some reason, me and my cohorts were able to pop up above the water a little bit where all these other people could see it. And now it seems like mental illness, nihilism, all these other things. And I think those are factors, but that's not the whole story. The whole story is that there's a whole world of counterculturalism and subcultural music and arts that by design never pops up.
Yeah, but there's also a whole fan base of people that relate to this music, maybe because it is those things. And I don't know if that's necessarily a fad or a trend that people are getting into. I mean, like you said, you've liked dark music your whole life. For some reason, we relate to it, and we relate to it because we're all broken people. We're all fucked up in our own ways, and like we like to hear other people admit in some way like how flawed they are, and because it kind of gives us something to latch onto and just kind of like know that we're not alone. Is that the type of thing?
Yeah, and I really treasure that stuff. I thought of a couple things to say to that in general. One is, I never really made a record before where people had that particular reaction to it. And so I didn't have a lot of value. Let me reframe that. Let me say that again. It's not that I didn't have value, but it wasn't a huge consideration to me what any audience or any possibility of an audience might think of what we were making. That too, by design. The idea that like, this is our thing. We just make the thing that we want to make. And like, if you're interested, you can come participate. You can buy a record or see a show or whatever. But like, the things that we want to do are the principal things. And that's built into my creative practice in general, like not waiting for permission to make your art, to be creative, and not waiting for somebody to help define what that is for you, to just go. And that's, a lot of people are like this. And I get all this stuff from these subcultures and stuff that I literally grew up in. But then when You Won't Get What You Want came out, it struck such an emotional chord with people. I mean, to this day, I get letters and messages and shit every single day in my life. My life has almost it barely reflects what we're doing right now. You know what I mean? And so these things really stand out to me, because if I don't go to like Instagram or something where people have the context of like, that's Nick from Daughters, then this shit doesn't exist. It's just like, I look out the window and Michigan has black squirrels. Where I'm from, the squirrels are brown and gray.
Right.
And I'm walking my son, and I'm like, look at the pink tree. Isn't that cool? Oh, look, an orange dump truck. Cool. That's my whole life. And then if I go on Instagram, it's like, holy shit, you changed my life.
Right.
I don't want to, anyway, so, and these things really fucking matter to me, and it made it way harder to be a musician when you really start to care about the people who are in, because then it starts to influence your decision making, know, and it might mean you make work that's not quite as good. But I mean, I'm telling you, when people send me these messages, I mean, I invest my time and energy into talking with these people and to thanking them. That's become, after everything that happened to us, which I don't really want to get into, that has become like one of the principal takeaways for me. It matters very much to me that people have an emotional connection to it. Yeah, I mean, maybe even more than it should. I mean,
Right.
I'm like super grateful. If there's going to be anything that I could take away from my time doing that band, it's human connection, and that it did something positive, which is, despite the dark music and the aggressive performances and stuff, I'm a pretty
Right.
positive person, and I'm
Yeah.
fairly optimistic. And I would like for things to be like that. It's just that the other thing I wanted to tell you about the dark music thing is a little more on the theoretical or conceptual side for me, but I don't see it as dark anymore, and that's like a purely psychological gambit. And one of the ways I can show this is, like, I have a child, and I immediately wondered, oh no, I'm not going to be able to play all kinds of music around him because he's going to get scared. And then the more I thought about it, the more I realized he doesn't have a context for anything that's scary, because he's developing. He's got reptilian brain level processing powers right now. So
Right.
unless I'm playing something super loud and scary, he's probably just going to view it as normal. And
Right.
so I test that waters. I play things that are not scary and aggressive, but are probably not normal children things around him all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Like Giannis Xenakis, and he just accepts it as organized sound. And so that's what I wanted to say about dark music, is like to make the case that people who make this type of stuff are not necessarily dark people. You might just have an ear for atonality, because that's the color
Sure.
and the movement between notes. You know, like I love a tritone because of that wavering sound in the middle. To me, that's more color, more movement, more excitement, and it's just more interesting.
Yeah.
You know, to listen to it. You know, the same way an imperfection is one of the better things to listen to in a piece of music, rather than perfectionism is usually pretty fucking boring in music. You want to hear the character of something's imperfections. You know, to give it something to stand. Anyways, to give you something to chew on. And so I listen to all this stuff all the time. I don't even realize it's aggressive anymore. I got people in the background telling me things like, "Hey, can we turn this down? I'm getting anxiety." Or, you know, I had an ex tell me that I was listening to this gabber music that I like, and she was like, "Yeah, for the last 20 minutes I've had like a stomach ache. Can we please just like turn it down?" And I'm not listening to that about it.
Right.
You know, I don't
It doesn't
even
have
hear
that effect on you. Right.
Right. And that's not a special skill. That's just kind of what it means to interpret music and sounds and attach meanings to these things. If I don't tell my son that something is scary, he might not ever see it that way.
Right. Yeah, of course.